so proudly we hailed, and the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the path.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Gary here, once again on the Freedom Network. Very happy to have you with us. We are live here in the Northbridge Studios. Constitution for Freedom at gmail.com is our email. Chris Maider is going to be with us in just a few moments. He's actually here right now, closer than you could even imagine, but he is right here right now. We're going to bring him in just a few minutes here. There's lots of groups and pages and things on Facebook, including Chris's, that you can certainly go out and discuss, debate, and have a great time talking politics. Send me an email, and as usual, I will send you a link. It's a whole lot easier than trying to post all these links and all that kind of stuff, on TV. Just send me the email, and I just send you links. I'll even send you links to things you never knew existed. Some of them might surprise you a little bit. We're absolutely, we're the day after an election. That's what we're here to obviously talk about. We got to talk about the election, talk about the results. I was poking around for some local results. I went to the Northbridge page, and maybe it's just me and my lack of tech savvy, but I don't see any local results posted. Can someone email them to me or something? Because I don't, and I started to go into the town by towns, and it got, you start to analyze it and all that stuff. But there's a few places that you can get them. Of course, we've got all the election results right here. We have Chris here to give us some analysis and some insight as to what he may think some of these things meant. I just want to talk for 1 minute, and we'll get Chris in on this in a second. We were talking a little bit before we went live, as they say, but how in the world, I don't understand for the life of me, how the plan is that we're going to run. I say we as, let's say, conservatives. We're going to run a Trump candidate that's not going to make a single live appearance where he doesn't pledge allegiance. He's not going to make a radio, interview, be it for 30 seconds, without getting in some Trump-esque. He's going to make sure that he names his weekly or daily newsletter the Trumpet or Trumpeteer or whatever it may have been. And of course, I'm talking about Scott Lively. And then how would we be disappointed with the results of the election yesterday? Because we live in a state that's called Massachusetts that is, I don't know, you live here, you live in California. Is there really a huge difference? I don't know. But we're not in Texas. We're not in a Carolina situation. We're not in these areas. And, I am not a Baker fan. I'm really not a Baker fan. I think he's a manipulating power player that took the party and did exactly what the party is designed for, which is control and making it the way that they want it. Let it run the way they want. Let the money flow where they want. And I know everybody's vying to take control of these parties. But I always say, once you get control, what are you going to do? Probably the same thing that Baker does, right? You're going to get control. You're going to decide where the money goes. It's the same, what, all over again. It's just from a different side. So I have always been one that is, well, let's just say that either side can find something to argue with me about or debate about, because I just don't usually go by that status quo. I'm just not, really into it. Look at this, hot off the press. Man, if this isn't the best staff here. All right, so now I got the locals, because I want to go over that. 1,544 votes. How many people are registered to vote in this town? Come on, folks. Can't you at least get out? Even, I would rather debate somebody that went to the polls and voted a way that I would not agree with, let's say, but that went to the polls and voted. At least they're engaged, right? They're into it, or to a degree that they think that, what they're doing is right. In some cases, you can really reason with those people. I have a lot of luck reasoning with people because I have no line to tote. I have nobody's bag to hold. I don't hold anybody's bag. I take the issue as it is. How did politician X deal with it? Do I agree or do I disagree? That's it. I don't care. I don't understand why in this state we would take and risk it all by putting up people that we know are not going to appeal to it. I told you guys a couple of weeks ago I was privy to secretly see some campaign ads from people I know in the media that I cannot tell you who they are, but I was able to see some ads that have been starting to, let's say, make it through the production houses. And they already had Lively ads, right? They already had them. They just didn't need them. He didn't, he spent a lot of money, but he didn't go there. And I'll give Baker credit for that, I guess, because he didn't seize on an opportunity that, in all honesty, if the race was really close, would have been something he would have probably had to do. So it almost makes you wonder how inside can that polling data really be, because why he didn't hook that link up, I don't know. He's a very savvy, very smart guy. Don't agree with his politics at all. But then I look at the Senate race and I say to myself, holy moly, now we got a guy that was very involved with the Trump campaign, and I'm talking to a friend of mine and he says, here, look at this, do not put this out into public. And he sends me an ad. And it's an ad that was designed, it doesn't even have Jeff Deal in the ad. It's just a Trump versus Warren ad. And I'm saying to myself, this is not going to play well because of the motivating factors. This is where I want to bring my good friend. We don't always have to agree, but we can always agree to disagree. But I think we agree on a lot. Chris Maider,
How we doing?
how's it going,
Great.
man? M&P News?
That's it. The M&P Conservative Media Network.
You
That's
know,
it.
toss out, who are you? What are you doing? What are you all
Sure.
about? Before
Sure.
we get into the
Well,
nitty-gritty?
obviously, Christopher Maider. I do the Meat and Potatoes Show, Conservative Talk and Awesome Rock. I have my own network, the M&P Conservative Media Network. We used to be on KT&T Radio. KT&T is out of L.A. We're still running on their carriers, but Spreaker.com is not giving us the support because we're a very conservative style radio station. So we're splitting up into our own different little minions and little areas that we are. And the M&P Conservative Media Network has always been in business for 10 or so years anyhow. So I'm just doing my own show out of my own studio that I've built. And I do, as you know, Gary, I cover the campaigns, and I've been covering campaigns now for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, and you get the guests, you get the big guests.
we do.
You do. You guys have quite a show there. I would definitely urge people to check that out.
Definitely. Thank you
It's
very
a
much.
great show, man. No, it's a great show. What I love about it is the fact that, much like I try to do here, we want to let everybody's opinion shine out. Get it out there. Agree, disagree. We're going to debate it if we disagree, obviously, but that's okay.
You and I are a lot more alike than even you realize.
No, and I think so. I think especially on basis of constitutionality. I think that where we split maybe is on a few issues or a few people. But at the end of the day, I think that most Americans are slowly starting to wake up to the fact that this is not a zero-sum game. This isn't a game of I am all in on X, and if not, then I have to be on Y. I can't sometimes agree with X and sometimes agree with Y because that's not allowed. And to me, it just seems like, man, can't we bond on what we agree upon?
One would hope so. One
Right?
would hope so. One would. There was always that time. Politics was always somewhat divisive anyhow, as far as left and right were concerned. But at some point in time, once elections were over, people at least tried to at least come together. This polarizing that's going on right now with what I call Trump derangement syndrome it's a manufactured thing. I was mentioning to my good friend Janet Aldridge from CR News that it's almost like we're living in an Orwellian nightmare at this point in time. The press is telling us what to think, how to think, when to think, just everything, and everybody else is going into those two separate different directions and polarizing themselves. And you had mentioned earlier that you were concerned that maybe in the state of Massachusetts, running a candidate who is very, very pro-Trump might even further expand that polarization. But I think what it does is it ended, well, at least with Scott Lively, and I assume that's who you're talking about.
Sure.
Scott Lively actually really was able to solidify the conservative base here in Massachusetts. And the numbers that he got the other night, I actually think in the reality of things, those numbers are a lot bigger than the, what was it, 35, 36% compared to Baker's numbers.
Yep.
He did that with no money, very little advertisement. GOP shut him out of the victory offices, shut him out of matching funds. He did it literally grassroots and did it just beg, borrow, and steal, and managed to pull out, even at the convention, he was only looking for his 15%. I was there at the convention, I was one of the delegates. He walks away with 27%. He literally shocked the place. Even the people who were voting, it's like, did you vote for him? Yeah, I did. We didn't expect him to get that much. So that was right there. That set him up. And so getting that 35, 36% last night in the primary, when I first saw the numbers coming in, I went over to him and I said, "You're still in there." I said, "You can still mount a formidable campaign going now into November." It's a possibility. We will revisit that come Monday. So we'll see what happens. He's taking a few days off, obviously. But,
Yeah, sure. I'm sure he wants to kind of back out. I mean, we had him on the program.
Did you really?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
you
we
had
had him
mentioned
here. We had him
earlier
here.
in your opening statements, a guy that really didn't do much going on television and radio. I disagree. Talk about things that we disagree on.
No, well, just so you know, what I meant was wouldn't go on television or radio and not talk about Donald Trump.
Yes,
Everything
I
was
see what
about
you're
Trump.
saying. He did do that.
And I get his newsletter, and some of his newsletters are good.
Right.
But they're all the what are they? The trumpeter?
It's called The Trumpeter, right?
The trumpeter. And I cannot understand in my mind why, as a conservative populace, we
Look
would
at the
say,
logo, though. Look at the logo. The logo is, it's even though it's called The Trumpeter, it's an elephant blowing its horn. So it's the trumpeter. And if you want to interpret Trump into that,
Yeah, but
fine.
you know it is,
But look at the
man.
logo.
Yeah,
Come
but you know
on.
it is. Come on, you come
Standing
on.
up for you here, Scott.
I mean, no, Scott, I'm going to tell you something. What I thought of Scott and what I thought before I met him and what I thought of him after I met him, I'll absolutely admit were very different things. I didn't find him to be quite as elevated or abrasive. I did have some issues with some of the stuff within the interview. His bottom-up tax plan. I asked if I could get it so I could, see it, read it, because I had some questions on it, and his answer was, it's all in my head. And that kind of threw me a little bit for a loop. We're running for governor of Massachusetts here, not, town selectman or something like that. But
Right.
I did find him to be a much warmer person than I thought.
Very amiable guy. I've had a chance to actually get to know him. I'm not going to use the word personal, but on a much more friendlier basis.
Sure.
Being on the show a few times, calling into the show, also going to work with him in some various aspects of his campaign, seeing him and filming him at various events. You soon find out that this is a much different individual than what the press is saying. And what really aggravated me, and the press does this right up to the end. This is what I mean by we're living in an Orwellian nightmare. The Channel 5 had the results coming in, and they had a man on the street type thing, and they were talking about Charlie Baker, and they kept using the term conservative right-wing minister out of Springfield. It's like summing up everything this man has done to this is a guy that's traveled the world. He's worked in human rights groups. He's gone everywhere internationally. He's PhD, pastor. This guy has been behind the scenes working with all sorts of groups everywhere around the country. And to sum it all up into this one little compartmentalized thing, but this is what the press kept doing. The press kept hammering it and hammering it and hammering
sure.
it. And what ended up happening is that just sticks in people's minds.
Well, and it does, but he is definitely a social warrior. And a conservative social warrior with his Bible in his hand doesn't often do well in a liberal environment.
Yeah,
That's
he's
an uphill battle.
definitely a what is it, Babes in Toyland or a Babe in the Woods type thing. Yeah. As time went on, as the campaign started going along, and I've had a few private conversations with him, he did start kind of backing away from a lot of that because he
Yeah.
knew that he had to really try to start appeasing to more middle of the road conservatives and more middle of the road Republicans. But one thing that was solidified is this is really the staunch conservative base in Massachusetts. As I had said last night, as the numbers were coming in, I said these numbers are coming in from east to west, like they always do on every election. And I said, once you hit that Worcester wall, that Worcester County wall, everything west, the conservative numbers are really going to start coming in. And that's when we really started seeing the numbers start to solidify towards that. At one point in time, it was like 60-40 with Scott Lively at 40. And then, of course, it evened out more towards the 36%. But as the night went on, as we went further west into it, the numbers just held. And that's because, as you know, when you go past Worcester into Western Mass, it's a different culture out there.
Sure
it's
it
a
is.
totally different culture.
Sure it is. I mean, I think that I think that you saw the conservative, religious, okay, involved with politics, Trump, okay. That was everything this state has. Everybody that is into that stuff went out, I believe, and voted for this guy. They all knew he was running. I mean, I don't think he was able to appeal for lack of funds, which is disgusting, to be honest with you, and also lack of the ability to debate is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, Charlie Baker refused.
Baker should have.
Baker,
That was such a tragedy. Baker absolutely should have debated this guy. I mean, he was formidable enough, but that, in my opinion, there are no others. That's what I mean when I say this is where I think Jeff may be in trouble, and it's really aggravating me because I'd love to see an outsider come in that could actually not have that carpet over them of Donald Trump. Where Donald Trump can win you an election in one state, he can lose you an election in another.
This is true. This is a possibility.
And I don't know why we as conservatives aren't saying, you know what, we think it's great that you want to run, but we're going to go over here because we're not going to go from Baker, who should be a Democrat, to Lively, who is I would say, part of that more evangelical, social warrior kind of Republican.
I see where you're going, but I think you're kind of overplaying it. I don't think it's really
I think
that
the
big a
numbers
thing in
see it.
Massachusetts.
Don't the numbers
what
just
what
say
I'd
it?
like to see here in Massachusetts is less of this polarizing, even within the Republican Party. I'd like to see the Republican Party, especially the conservatives, just back the president and just show that we're a solidified, unified group here in the state. What's going to happen? There's a possibility, the rumors are swirling, that we might get a visitation from the president as we get into the general election. Who he's going to come out for, we don't know yet. These are rumors I've heard from various candidates. As you said earlier, I'm not going to give names, but it's a possibility. And this is what brought up the conversation between you and I. Do you think that this is a good idea? I think it's a
Right.
fantastic
Well,
idea.
what is it going to get you? What do you get when you have
National.
Donald come? Let's say that you go and you fill. You're
going to
Gillette.
fill
Let's say you
DCU Center
Let's
is
say
what
you
you're
fill.
gonna
Let's say you
do.
fill these things, right? But you got to understand the guy's.
Did
coming
you go to
into
the one when he
he's
was running
coming-
in 16? Did you go to DCU?
I didn't. Nah, I
Place
didn't
was
go there.
packed.
Of course it was, but these places hold even if he fills Gillette, right? He's got what does Gillette hold? 60,000 people.
Possibly.
So there you got 60,000 people. Well, how many people just went out and voted for Lively? What was his number?
I think
80?
no. I think the numbers are still. I just saw
They're
a
still
thing on
counting?
Facebook. It's about 98
Is it
right
90?
now.
All right, so
98.
he's getting up into the 90s, close
Right.
to 100,000, so he could fill that twice. But the guy lost by 980,000 odd votes, didn't he? So what? And this is what I keep saying to people: what is the plan to overcome those? If we're going to trot out, right, and try to get rid of Warren, which I think is probably the most important. Baker is so much less important than Warren, in my opinion. Warren is. She is a ground zero, absolute socialist that must go. And now I'm going to put all my eggs into the basket unfortunately, if he should come here, in my opinion, of Donald Trump. So Donald Trump gets to run again in mass, and we're going to predict that the outcome is going to be different. And I'm just asking why.
I think you half answered your own question. And it's simply because somebody like an Elizabeth Warren, if anybody out there has been watching what the left has been doing, what the Democrats have been doing, senators, congressmen, look at what they're doing at the Kavanaugh hearings right now. I mean, as soon
Awful
as,
what's
as soon
going
as
on
somebody
there.
gets up to say something, they start protesting.
Isn't that terrible?
Well, this is what I'm saying. The nation is watching the left do this. This is what I've said on my show about how the left has been doing this, and the nation is watching them do this. And I think more moderate Democrats are quite literally unhitching their wagon. They're literally, this is not what I want to be part of. They're seeing, even somebody as their darling child like Elizabeth Warren, the fact that she says the things that she said about the police, the things that she just basically says every day. There are photographs. The fact that she's latching on to these, not only Antifa, but she's latching on. Please, I don't want Gary to get in trouble, but she's latching on to the whole homosexuality crowd, the whole transgender. She's really jumping on that, and
Yeah,
it's
she
only
is.
a very small percentage. She's going so far to the left that the rest of the what they call blue dog Democrats they're literally saying, "Wait a minute." This is now this is getting out of hand. It's like the son that you put up with. All right, he grows his hair long. All right, he got a tattoo. All right, he got an earring. All right, now he's just acting like a freak. Now there's something going on here. We've got to.
Well, I think that what Jeff could really have going for him is the fact that she, like you say, she's a socialist. I mean, she's a socialist,
She's gone bat, you know what,
quasi-communist.
crazy.
I think that appealing to gay groups or other groups, in all honesty, Jeff is not going to shun them either. You know, Jeff's a pretty inclusive guy.
Right.
I don't see him getting. I think that she's vulnerable because on the things that she is, and what's good about, so far anyway, what's good about Jeff is that he is able to get elected in this state, meaning that he does, he's at a different level, honestly, than the Dr. Lively might be at, because he's been there and he's done it. Now, he hasn't done statewide, but he has gone into an area.
He's got legislative experience, right?
He's got something to him, and people know his name, but they also know his track record, which I say is okay. I hear that he donated, but I can't find anywhere that he donated his pay raise that he campaigned against to charity. Do you find that, Dave?
I have not seen that. I've heard the ads about how even though he voted against it, he did take it. There's a little thing that the press isn't talking about Jeff Deal that I know personally. I've had this conversation with him. Jeff Deal is in it to win it. Jeff Deal doesn't win, he's out of a job. This is a guy his neck is completely on the line. This is one of the reasons why I publicly endorsed him on my pages for my radio show, is that this is somebody who's throwing all his chips in, and he doesn't get this. He doesn't get to go back to the state legislature. He's out. He's out of this term.
No, he's definitely taken a leap, and he's made a decision that and I think that I believe what he wants to do is for the right reasons. I don't think that he is I don't think he's unelectably conservative in Massachusetts statewide. I think he could pull that off.
Right?
Yeah, I think he could pull that off. Again, I think his biggest issue, if I were him, I would say to him, to Trump, just please stay away. Let me run my race. Let's take this girl out. Let's take her out. But let's not muddy the waters and make this a race between you and her. Because if, let's say that she runs for president, this is a great way to look at it. If she runs for president in the next presidential election,
Sure.
whether she wins her Senate seat or she doesn't, what do you think the outcome is going to be in Massachusetts? Is she going to win Massachusetts, or is Trump going to win Massachusetts? She's going to win Massachusetts.
Of course she's going to win Massachusetts.
So why
right.
the hell is a Trump? This is what I know it's.
All right,
Someone
I think
said
I
to me,
understand
you
now
know, you
where
keep
you're
beating a
coming
dead
from.
horse, and I say, no, you guys are playing with fire, and I say you guys, not you guys, but you guys in general, the conservatives are really playing with fire, because what we're kind of out there saying, I say we as a conservative, is we want all of it, or we will have nothing. And I would really rather a weaker conservative let's say, someone that's maybe a little more libertarian, socially, candidate that comes up that is socially, do what you want to do. Much like I think about politics. I couldn't care less who wants to sleep with who wants to do any. I don't
Yeah,
care. It's
right,
not my business.
Exactly.
If you think that's what I'm thinking about all day, politically,
Right.
that ain't what I'm thinking about.
Well, this is what I mean about Warren going a completely extremist to the left. She seems to think, and that group seems to think, that that is what people are thinking about. And this is where the rest of the Democrats
Yes.
are saying, look, we're not thinking about that all day long.
No.
You know, we want to, how are we going to pay our bills? How, you
That's
know,
right.
how am I going to put gas in the car? My
Yeah.
kids going to school. How am I going to pay for that?
Well,
Where are the
cross-dressers,
jobs?
cross-dressers going into bathrooms in the the local union construction
Right.
site
And
is
here-
probably not very popular.
Right,
you know?
exactly. And the other thing too is that these types of issues don't resonate well with the average mom and pop. You walk out this door, there's a neighborhood out here, and these people don't. They don't care. They don't care what a certain person does, but these aren't their issues that concern them. Again, it's their bills, their job, what they're, how are they able to, get their kids off to school? What are they going to be able to afford? Their health care. And again, there's more and more government that seems to be dominating the left. There's bigger and bigger intrusion into our lives from the left is turning off even Democrats because these aren't their concerns. There's a lot of things that are going wrong out there still, but there are a lot of things going right. I mean, the jobs, the economy, things are happening very well internationally as far as Donald Trump is concerned, despite what the news says to the contrary. So I think a lot of Americans are looking at these far left wackyisms that are being proposed by many people on the left. And as I said earlier in your show, this isn't the wagon these people want to be hitched to anymore. I'm sorry, it's the economy, stupid. If we can use, Carville's,
no, I mean, and this is what I always say to people because
the
I'll-
Carville axiom. It really is the economy. People are paying attention, even the left.
Sure they are, and I mean, I will, like I said in the beginning of the show, and like everybody that knows me will agree. I just call the issue by issue. I don't care. There are times that Trump needs a lot of praise because he's done a lot of really good things.
Sometimes
and
he should
has.
shut his
And
mouth.
Sometimes, yeah, he does the wrong thing. So when
Yeah,
I
he's
call
definitely
that
not a
out,
polished guy. But I
but
can.
when I call that out and I see the venom that comes out, and it's amazing because I've said this before. It's almost like the Obama loyal. It was like, well, I disagree with Obama on this. Well, you're a racist. Well, I disagree with Trump on this. Well, you're an ass. You know what I mean? I can't understand why people get so. They worship these people, and
Right,
I
right,
don't
right.
get it. I mean, I just don't
There's
get it.
a couple of schools of thoughts on Donald Trump. Is that Trump supporters take Donald Trump very seriously, but we don't take him literally. People on the left take him literally, but they certainly don't take him seriously. And there was an interview on Rush Limbaugh's show a while back, and he was talking to somebody who was from the Queens area, and the person was saying, this is a guy who grew up in New York City. You can talk about the Bronx, the Queens, the Heights, wherever you are. There's a certain mindset from a New Yorker, just like there's a certain mindset from a Bostonian, somebody who
Sure.
grew up in Southie or the North End or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a certain street credibility that goes on, and there's a certain way of communication. And this person who called in Rush Limbaugh was from the Queens, and they were saying, this is how we are. This is how we New Yorkers are. We talk straight. We tell you exactly what's going on, and if you don't like it, forget about it, that kind of thing. You just got to deal with it. And that's Donald Trump. And so what the polished politicians and the news media can't seem to understand is this is how you got to deal with this guy, You're expecting a scripted answer from Senator so-and-so or President so-and-so that is ambiguous at best and doesn't get to the heart of the matter. Whereas if you ask Donald Trump, he's going to tell you, hey, your shoe's untied, tie your shoe.
See, and I get that, and I believe what you say, and I believe that you believe that. I don't. This is my issue, Chris, and this is
But
my
it's
issue.
not what I believe. I mean, it's a fact,
But it's,
though.
so,
This is how
so
the guy
if this
is.
is a fact, and what he says is what he believes, and if he means what he says, and that's what it is, then when he says something like, "Take the guns first, do cause second," what the hell does constitutionalist Gary think?
Oh,
So in that
right, in
section,
that conversation.
now do I have to say, well, but he didn't mean that. So we're going to pick and choose what he means, what he doesn't mean.
Right.
This is
No,
where
you
I
are.
get a little bit crazy. It's not
Yeah,
that I
you're
hate
going
the
to have,
guy.
No, you're going to have to.
I can't. I want. I just don't
Take
think that
them
we can have it both
seriously,
ways.
just don't take them literally. Go ahead, you
I
got
got
an email.
Mike on an email. Quick question: do you think it's possible for a moderate Republican like Kasich or Charlie Dent to challenge Trump for the nomination in 2020?
It's possible, but they'll lose.
I would have to say I think so. I think that Trump will be the next nominee in the party.
And he's going to win. It's just
I don't know
things
who's
keep
gonna
going.
challenge.
If
It
things
depends.
keep going the
See-
way they are economically and foreign policy, it's a shoo-in.
If they could have, if the Democrats were smart, what they would do is they would find some, like you were referring to, blue dog Democrat, someone that could come out. Again, what seems to sell in American politics today is government aspect conservative, social aspect liberal. People are drifting away from the fact that the government should be involved with my personal decisions, whatever they may be. They do exist, those folks out there. I don't really know why. I mean, if I was running the Democrat Party, I would be out there
Those are the
looking
socialists.
for, and that's the problem with the party today. See, the Democrat Party, people say, they use liberal like it's a bad thing, but you go back in time, recent history,
Liberals, yeah.
liberals were protesting government at every step.
Mm-hmm.
They were against the government. They were against this stuff. To me, the liberals have been hijacked. They've been taken over by socialists.
Socialists, by communists.
And within a generation, I mean, what really happened? I mean, a Jane Fonda type or something like that
Right.
was probably the starting to crack the egg, I think, of their the monopoly that they had. Because if you remember back in time, it was always the Republicans, the conservatives were these government people, and these liberals were these, hey, screw the government, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do. And it seems like now the liberals just want government. That's all they want. That's the answer to everything.
Because of the communism.
Oh, it's amazing. Let's jump on the phone and see who we got here. Hang on one sec if I can do this properly. Good evening. You're on the Freedom Network. How are you?
I'm Mr. Rosenberg. It's Mike.
Hey, what's up?
So I just wanted to actually explain a bit of my email really quickly.
Sure, go ahead.
My main concern is that the economy is doing great right now, and I give Trump a lot of credit for it. I'm like you. He's not the best. He's not the worst. I judge him based on individual things, and economically, he's done great.
He has.
My only concern is, though, the stock market is supposed to hit a recession sometime within the next 1 to 2 years. So if it does go down the tubes, he's going to have to take the blame for that since he's taking the credit right now. So that's why I said, can we get someone like a
I don't know.
balancing budget, creating surpluses to help stimulate the economy?
Mike,
I think with a Kasich Republican, it's a lot easier to get the moderates on both sides and all the independents in the middle.
I do understand what you're saying, and I'm going to tell you something. Mike's a younger viewer of the Freedom Network. I'm going to give you just a quick minute here, my friend Mike. He's a younger viewer. He's in high school. He took some interest into politics. He was, in my opinion, just kind of, floating around, had a little conservative streak to him, but wasn't quite sure maybe what to do with it. I had asked him to go and to read the Constitution, go read the Federalist Papers and stuff
Yes.
like that. And this young man, who is a hero among young men to me, went and read all of this stuff and actually started to form some opinions of his own. And we don't agree on all of them, but they're at least based. He's got some
He's
context,
engaged,
right?
as you
He's
said.
engaged. At
Right.
his age, I do applaud you, Mike. Huge. But
Thank you.
I think that you're right. What you take credit for, you have to be able to give credit away. But when you said something that was key that I think is really neat, the stock market is supposed to go down at a certain point.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
But you know what? I'll tell you, much like I say, every president, I think, with maybe the exception of one or two, has enjoyed higher markets since markets have been around. They all take credit for it, give them the credit for it. They're in office, they do get the credit for it. I can directly link and see things that Trump has done positively that the markets have responded to. It just is what it is. But I don't know that a market in a free market capitalist society is supposed to do anything. I think that in many cases it's manipulated. And when it is manipulated, it will ebb and it will flow so that the money comes in, the money goes out. Can't make too much money. You don't need loans. If you don't need loans, there go the banking cartels. So, you've got a whole lot of stuff at work here. And that's an area where I think, you know what? I think Trump will see a little bit of almost like, Mike, when a plane takes off, you're kind of going up and then you feel like you're going down a little bit, but then it grabs up again. I think the economy is actually going to stay strong for Donald. I think he's good at that. I think he is good at that.
And it's because
let Chris respond.
And it's because of his business background. Part of the deregulation. There's another aspect that the media is never telling you about, and that is there's trillions of dollars of wealth that have returned back to the United States. A lot of it, it's true what you've seen about how a lot of the wealth has been kept overseas and it's been hidden a lot. Hell, the Manafort case was an attempt to expose the malfeasance of all of that. But Manafort was doing nothing that hundreds of other CEOs and corporations are doing already right now. But a lot of that money has now returned to the United States because of some of the deregulation that Trump has gone and eased up. So I think when the stock market crash that you are in fear of occurs, I don't think it's going to be a crash. There might be a lull, there might be a dip, there'll be a correction. There are always corrections. But you have to think in terms of the fact that we're soaring above 26,000 right now. So if there is a correction or a lull, what are we talking? A few thousand points? Okay, let's say it's 6,000 points. The news will go crazy. Everybody will be jumping out windows and completely losing their mind. The economy is crashing. But what is it? It's down back to, 20,000, where it wasn't 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So it's nothing more than just a correction. I really don't see a crash, per se, coming.
Go ahead, Mike.
I fully agree with you. I think Donald Trump has done a great job with the economy, bringing lots of business back to the country. My only concern is, like I said, if we do have either, whether it be a recession or a correction, we've already used tax cuts. We've already deregulated, so I don't know what else there is that we could try to do to fix it.
Nothing.
No, I see what you're saying.
Do nothing.
It's nothing.
Do nothing.
Let
Capitalism do self-correct.
Just let it do its thing. Just let it do it. The less government's involved with anything,
you'll have a short recession. In fact,
you're
if you let's look at recent history. George Bush the first. After the Gulf War, the United States did go into a recession. And of course, it was an election season, and the Democrats were able, and the media were able to use this effectively to get him to lose the next election. But George Bush was just employing old-fashioned capitalism. Don't do anything. Keep government out of the way, and within like a year or so after Clinton got in, the economy really started to pick up. Of course, Clinton took credit for it, of course. But what it ended up happening was it was it was like a year maybe throughout that election, and that was it. And Bush was blamed for it, but Bush was employing an old-fashioned tactic: do nothing, let the economy correct itself, and eventually it did. Now that's different than what's happening now, where everyone's trying to say, Trump's taking credit and it's really Obama. Oh, really? It's Obama? So 8 years of what was going on, all of a sudden, poof, out of nowhere? It's all because of Obama. It's like, come on, give me a break here.
Capitalism, I think deregulation is a great thing. Cutting taxes is a great thing. Like I just said, I'm a little concerned because if this recession or correction does happen, this is right when I'm going into college. It's probably going to be over. Student loan debts, because they're out of control right now.
You're going to be all right.
You'll be all right.
You're going to be all right.
You're a young kid. Don't worry about it.
You're right in the right spot. If anything's going to dip, if anything's going to get crazy, what you got to watch out for is what the Fed does with interest rates at all times.
Oh, I know. I've been reading a bunch on that right now.
That's the big one. That's our next project, Michael.
The Fed, crush the Fed.
Right.
Yeah,
and he's a kid, so he wasn't born at the time. And you and I have gray hair. I mean, there was the Jimmy Carter years. I mean, interest rates were 18, 20, 22%. They were nuts. And even under Reagan, when Reagan came in and corrected it, when Volcker froze up the Fed and everything else, dried up the money supply, interest rates still only came down to about 12%, and it remained that way for a while. So you and I today seeing like what, 0.01% interest rates or some crazy number like that. I mean, this is I mean, it's unheard of for crying out
Yeah,
loud.
it
Yeah,
really is.
I'm
It
a
really
big
is.
Ron Paul fan, so I've read all about this. So we
Yeah.
definitely agree on that.
Yep, get the
that
Fed
is-
out. Right.
Yeah. All right, man. Anything
Yeah.
else you got, Mike?
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Anytime, bud. You're
That
always
was
welcome.
good. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
That was great.
Yeah, it's amazing to see young people. And you know, it's funny. I was talking to somebody about it, and I said, you know, I don't care if 8 people watch or if 8 million people
You
watch.
get one.
If you can find somebody
Right.
to actually sit down and try to educate themselves,
Exactly.
then you know what? It makes it all worth it. And to date, I'll pat myself on the back. I have 3 under 18 people
Good.
that have watched the program, read the Constitution, read the Federalist Papers. Some
Great.
have even read
Yes.
the Anti-Federalist Papers, and I think it's just fantastic. Here in Northbridge, we had 887 Republicans vote, 643 Democrats, and 14 Libertarians. Those are the ballots that were pulled. It's interesting.
How many people? How many registered voters do you have here, though?
Oh,
Is that number? there?
Harry must know. Is Harry in the building? Harry.
Harry comes. What do we
wait,
got?
Here we go. Paul's coming.
Yeah, that number. But because I
9,
well,
10,000.
see, all right. And so what do
Is
we
it
got
that
there?
high?
That's dismal.
Dismal. Just awful. Just awful.
It's dismal.
So only 1,550 people vote.
And you know what? The other sad thing too is that what did you hear on the news, folks? Everyone's saying, "Well, it's a holiday weekend, so numbers will be low. Voter turnout is expected to be low." So what does that happen to the person's
what-
mind? They're like, "Oh,
Right.
the voter turnout's going to be low. I'm going to stay home
And
tomorrow."
why would it be low if it's a holiday weekend?
Right,
and we vote
exactly.
on
What else do
Tuesday?
you got to do?
Tuesday wasn't part of the weekend.
What do you
All
got
right,
to
I'm
do?
going to admit something. I did take Tuesday off as well, but most people, I think, went back to work, went back to
Yeah,
life
I went
on
to work,
Tuesday.
but I stopped off at the polling place on my way to work.
But I mean, when you look at it, you know, I mean, I was very disappointed in some of this.
I'll have to get a sheet like that and see what the Worcester numbers are. It's probably as dismal.
It probably is as dismal. I mean, what do you think
There's
about
no excuse,
Gonzalez?
folks. Stop
I mean,
doing
It was
that.
like a tight race in Northbridge on some of these Democrat areas. It seems as though the Republicans were a little more unified.
I think Worcester was between 13 and 20. It wasn't as bad as they thought.
13 and
13 and
20,000 is what you said. Oh,
Really?
percent. Oh, right. Oh, no, I know that. Okay, all right.
Interesting. Well,
That's not that bad, but that's still dismal.
you know, Jeff Deal
You know,
wound up.
I mean, I remember Trump when I voted in 2016. I had to stand in line for half an hour. I mean, we had big numbers. The other day when it was yesterday. Sorry, I was in and out of there in like 4 minutes. It was nuts. It was crazy. It was sad.
You know, it's interesting. We had in the town, we had 56 blanks on the Senate Republican ballot.
Yeah,
383 for Jeff, 277 for John.
Kingston, huh?
Yeah. And only 171 for Beth. And Baker winds up with 596 to Lively's 271.
Right. There's that 60-30, right?
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, I
So
am
all
telling you.
across the board, it does. It sounds like all across the board, those numbers that they like held.
They did They really did held. They really did held. No, they really did. I mean, Polito was, unopposed. A lot of these people are unopposed. I don't vote for people that are unopposed, but that's just how I go. I don't know.
There's a lot of talk now about the blank thing, blank ballots for Baker. I remember that was swirling around when we were at the convention, and
Sure.
I'm not a fan of that. This gets us back to one of our earlier conversations too about where does your vote go? Putting in a blank vote is a bad thing. It just gives it narrows the field for the person that you want to win. All right, let's say in this case Baker. It's going to be Baker and Gonzalez come this fall. And I got news for you. I'm definitely not voting for Gonzalez, but I'm not going to go into the polling place and out of protest say, well, I'm going to leave it blank. Because now that just gives more votes to Gonzalez. And when you have a very tight race,
Yeah.
and when we're doing gubernatorial and we're doing senatorial and local, that's where the democratic process comes in. Unlike the electoral college for our presidential race. So now your numbers are getting very narrow here. So if you start saying out of protest, well, it's a blank vote because I don't like Baker, there's a good chance that we could end up with Gonzales as our governor. And now it's right down the toilet for the state of Massachusetts.
I
No,
think
we've
when
made
it-
some
when
pretty
it-
good progress,
when
even
it
with
comes
Baker.
to when it comes to that stuff, I usually go by what the climate is out there. I love to tell the parties to screw. That's one of my favorite things to do. So if Baker is out there and he's polling at 77% or something like that, which is probably about, unless something
Probably what he
happens,
will. Probably will.
be. I could blank it. I used to blank more when I was a registered Republican.
I see what you're saying.
You
If it's a tight race,
If it's
you
a tight
won't
race, I'm
blank.
going to go vote for Baker. Of course,
Right,
I
of
don't
course,
want
right,
that guy.
exactly.
But if this guy's blowing it away, I'm going to pull the ballot because I think that it's very important to go pull a ballot. I think the easiest
Right.
elections, anybody that thinks that elections are fixed, should be the first people in line to vote. And the reason is because it's very easy to fix an election that nobody voted in because nobody, who's
There's
going to say
nothing there-
something,
right, exactly.
But if you have millions of people out there voting,
It's tough. You can't do it.
yeah, especially in a state type of a situation. So if the vote, I would say to people, if you're thinking of not voting, just go pull the ballot, walk down to the end, and put the ballot back in. Show at least the government that you're gonna show up. And
Yes.
if you should give me somebody worthy of my vote, I'll vote for him.
Sure.
But today you didn't. So, but I want to at least be counted.
Out of the symbolic, right? You don't even fill it out. You just go in, grab
Just
it,
go
and
in,
head
grab
straight
it,
to the thing.
Head to the thing. So I do fully understand what you mean, though. In a tight race, or a race that's even viewed as possible. I mean, possible.
Go
for
vote.
that guy. Then I'm gonna.
Yeah,
I
sure.
am gonna bubble
Right,
it in.
right.
I am not a big fan of what I did in the governor's race. Is I don't believe in the politics completely enough of. Lively. I just don't believe in the
Right.
social warrior stuff.
And I'm not a big
know.
protest voter either. Trump's numbers, if you look at the popular vote during Trump's numbers in 2016, we're only talking a few million. And I know from personal experience being in the Tea Party that I've heard from countless people that were like, well, I'm a never Trumper. I'm a conservative. Trump isn't a conservative. So I wrote in Ted Cruz or I wrote in Marco Rubio. And, if you're talking to 2 or 3 people who are doing something like that, think about all the people that, what was it, 62, 63 million people voted for one side or the other. And there would be plenty more out there across the country who did that protest vote. When the vote is that close, protest vote, folks, I got news for you. You are literally throwing your vote away. Getting back to what Gary said, if the numbers are really, really tight, definitely, I'm going to go for Baker. I'm not gonna risk a Gonzales. It was the same thing with Donald Trump. Even if I was a Trump fan, everybody knows that. But even if I wasn't, I would look at the numbers and I would say, they're too tight. It's too close. I'm pulling that number for Trump because I definitely do not want Hillary Clinton to win at all.
No, I absolutely was. But it's.
Did you vote for Trump? Who did you? You did a protest vote, didn't you? There's
I did.
Smiling, you
Yeah, I
idiot.
did. You bet I did, man.
Who'd you vote for? Come
I
on.
wrote in Rand Paul.
Oh,
That's
come
what I did.
on! It was
That's
like
what I did.
what,
Yeah.
3-4%?
I don't get. See, you
Come
know what?
on.
I don't.
But you see, that 3 or 4% was part of that 65,
right.
63 million. It
But
could
you
have.
gotta deserve my vote, man. You have to deserve my vote. And I didn't. Let's put it this way. In that case, I felt very comfortable not voting for Trump because there was no way in hell Trump was winning the state. And there weren't enough of me out there to even come close to it.
But Hillary Clinton did not carry Worcester County. She did not carry Worcester County at all.
No, Hillary definitely, and that's where guys like, what's the guy's name again? That was Beatty or whatever he is there. That was running down in Barnstable. County or something.
Ron, I think his name is.
Yeah,
Ron
I mean,
Beatty.
he's
on my Facebook. Right, I think that's who it is. Yeah, go ahead.
He put on a big Trump coat. You know what I mean? He went and ran. Now I thought that was probably really smart of him. If I don't know the numbers in your town in your county there, but if Trump won those, see, that's where I think that it would be smart. If I was running in Town X and Town X went overwhelmingly for Trump. Well, then put the coat on, He's my guy. He's what it is because that's what you're doing. It's this statewide stuff. But when I talk about, to me, right, I said to myself a long time ago, I'm not voting for people that aren't constitutionalist. I'm not going to do it. And
Certainly.
I just don't want to do it. I'm sick and tired of playing these games. I'm over it. And if that means that my vote doesn't really count for much, it's almost like
Yeah.
I'd rather die nobly, right, than run away and not fight or something.
And I have
don't
this
know.
argument with a lot of my conservative friends as well. That a friend of mine, who Dave Kopaz, he runs the Red Pill Politics show. He's said to me many times. He says, "Are you gonna run it on party, or are you gonna run it on philosophy?" And believe me, that is a very tough thing for me sometimes to do, especially when, again, the race is very, very tight. And he was disappointed at me when I admitted it's like, no, I was totally in for Trump. And it's like, don't you remember that conversation we had? Yes, Dave, I do remember the conversation. But I said, come on, it's Donald Trump. Come on, you know.
I know. There's a huge amount of loyalty to Donald Trump, and I don't. You know what? I don't understand it. I used to be that way. I mean, I remember as a kid, it was like, well, this guy's a Republican. I mean, he's great. I love him, or my so and so, or I like this guy. Or I remember when I first was voting, and I would vote for somebody, and then they would do something that was just and I'd be running there to make excuses. I remember making excuses for George Bush. I'm making excuses for what the hell am I making excuses for him for? This guy is so I mean, I don't know. I got about 4 or 5 minutes before they're going to want to move into
Right.
3 on 11 comes
Right.
back live tonight.
But I've never had that loyalty to a president. You're right. You was mentioning it. I was just going over my head the various presidents. I never had loyalty. I just kind of did it as a party thing. This is the first time. This is the first time that I've actually had a quote unquote loyalty and an affection for or an admiration for the candidate and for the president and for the presidency. And
So
I stand behind.
How do you get around though? What I don't know.
Get around what, though?
I've seen you though actually think objectively. So I don't know if I put you in that bucket of you'll agree with absolutely anything that this guy does. See, I don't.
Oh
put
no!
You in
Oh
that
God,
bucket.
no!
See, I don't.
No,
put you,
there are certain policy things I wish he would change. There's certain behaviors and things that I wish he would do differently. But
What do you think how is the grip so tight? I mean, I can't believe that you have people that'll go out like we were talking online about the wars that we're in. And I say, look, none of these wars are legal, right? We haven't declared an actual legal constitutional war since World War II. So we watched Bush do it and we did nothing. And we watched Obama do it and we did nothing. And now we're watching Trump do it and we as people, we're not doing anything. Why? Why are we still there? Why doesn't? And this is where I scream and yell, and I want guys like Gowdy, and I want guys like Rand Paul or Ron Paul that I don't even agree with all what they do. I split on them as well. But for the love of God, Chris, can we just get a constitutionalist that can gain traction? Why can't they gain traction?
we're too far removed from the originality of our Constitution. We're too far removed from what this country was founded upon. You can't, the fact that even this young person right here that was on the phone earlier, he's probably coming to the realization that, my God, we're so far beyond the founding and the original intention of what our founders wanted, that to try to get what you want, and believe me, I want it too myself, we're going to be old men or dead before that happens.
Let me ask you a question as the minute's wane here then. Let me ask you a question. If a candidate comes out, right, we'll call him Candidate X, and he is 100% constitutional, right, with a nice libertarian streak to him, which I think a lot of our founders, some of our founders would have had that streak, but just a real constitutionalist. It just believes in what's in there, and that's it. Would you vote for them in a race against Trump?
Yes. Has to be a very convincing argument.
Okay.
There have to be other things at play, not just the Constitution. It has to be the utmost affection and love that Donald Trump seems to exude for this country. that you see in just the way
Yeah.
he behaves himself.
I mean,
but it has to be a twofold thing. I know you're running out of time. Constitutionalists, yes. Defense of the country, yes. Economy, yes. But again, we're so far removed that we do have a standing in the world. We do have a responsibility now in the world. I don't like it. You don't like it. Your audience, many of your audience probably doesn't like it, but we can't back away from it. And we can't step away from this anymore. Or, as you can see throughout Obama, other forces fill the void. ISIS. Well, look what happened with the advance of Russia in Ukraine. If the United States isn't there being a wall to the rest of the world, as much as we might disagree on that, and call it an illegal war, if we pull back, I'm sorry, folks, this is the world we live in. Somebody else is going to fill the void.
I'll give you the last word on that. Watch next week. I'll rebut it.
Good. You can go right
All right,
ahead.
guy, we
Right,
gotta
right.
go.
All
We're gonna
right,
make
thank
room
you.
for 3 on 11
All
coming
right.
back after the summer hiatus live right after this. Chris, thanks again. We will be back next week, God willing, to talk freedom with you.